Assalamu alaikum. Sabal here. Shukran, Habibi. Thank you for that introduction. To try and talk about occupational wellness in 15 minutes is slightly tricky. So it is such a wide field, because it involves anything, not just from the occupational health, but now involves in very much the new areas of what people are calling workplace wellness and resilience programs. So that scope is very much extending. So today I'm going to focus much more on the kind of the strategic aspect rather than individual kinds of programs, because it varies from audio surveillance to the JP Morgan Corporate Chase Challenge to EAP programs, etc., etc. I mean, the list is extensive. I'm sure some other speakers may focus in on specific areas. So I'm going to tackle it from a corporate perspective, and really looking at how you can implement any of these programs with a particular slant really today. I mean, my role is occupational medicine. I'm an occupational physician. So I'm going to move slightly out of, not the comfort zone, but more into the area of wellness and resilience and well-being. So the recommendations, really what I'm looking at more today, is more focused around that, because I think for everyone in this room, the occupational health side of it is bread and butter. We've been doing that for years, and certainly in oil and gas and mining and many other industries, we've been doing it quite well. So anyway, enough of that. Since this is very much an HSE audience rather than, I suspect, than a medical audience, it's always good to make friends with one's HSE colleagues. Now, all of us who work in OSHA kind of get that. Since I'm the first one in, I thought let's cover some basic terminology, and I don't mean this to seem basic, but I think it may frame the rest of the session. So very quickly, let's ask from the audience, how would you define health? What's your definition of health? Okay. How about well-being? Are they the same? Are they different? What's well-being? And it's important, you have to, before you start any intervention, you have to know what it is you're dealing with. And I think one of the challenges in this field at the moment, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there, there's a lot of people pitching all kinds of wellness. But what actually is wellness? And really I'm going to be focusing in on that today. What is wellness, and how do you actually make sure that you're going in the right direction? And then I hope all of us in this room know the definition of occupational health. I mean, essentially, health is a person's physical and mental state. I put the WHO definition there, which, as somebody mentioned, is a state of complete well-being in the absence of disease or infirmary. But I want to focus in on well-being. What is well-being? Differently, and it is a subjective state of being healthy, happy, contented, comfortable, and satisfied with one's quality of life. Now, they are all very easy measurables, aren't they? Easy to create KPIs for those. And this is the challenge that we have. How do you demonstrate that there's a value in a program when your well-being program is looking at very subjective targets? And there's the definition of occupational health that I'm sure we all know, which is the promotion and maintenance of health. Because work can be tough. But if you think people spend more of their life at work than they do with their wife, then we have a direct contact with a large population of people for intervention that can make a difference. And many jobs are tougher than others. Just some numbers very quickly. We know there's a huge amount of workplace disease, and this is old data, but still it puts it into perspective. That's the sort of data we're looking at globally around the world. But the key one I want to focus in on is that 9%, and only 9%, have access to some form of workplace wellness program. Now, but the caveat there is a workplace wellness program is not what we're talking about today in many ways. These are who have access to an occupational health program. Now, I want to very clearly separate occupational health and wellness. When you have an occupational health function, it's easy. Well, in theory, it should be easy. But there's a lot of organizations that don't have an occupational health function. But that doesn't mean they can't do wellness programs. And absolutely not. They should still be able to implement bread and butter. And the ownership of these programs is something I'll touch on later. You don't actually need an occupational health department to run wellness programs. So that argument doesn't stand. We don't have an occupational physician. And unfortunately, Muhammad Ali didn't have a wellness program or an occupational health program. Otherwise, he would have avoided his workplace-related injury. And I'm sure if there had been interventions, which there perhaps is currently in the American football industry, these things are. What are we hoping for? I mean, this is the vision when we bring somebody, and when somebody's in employment, as I say, we have a captive audience that we can educate and we can try to make healthier. But we have the challenges that our workplaces are constantly changing, and particularly over the last 20 or 30 years. And last year, mental health has become the biggest occupational illness in Canada. It's overtaken musculoskeletal. And I think the estimate is in 2 years' time, globally, mental health, work-related injury will be higher than musculoskeletal. If you take a step back from that, I mean, that's mind-blowing. When I did my occupational medicine training, musculoskeletal was 70% of what we dealt with. So that's really quite scary, and that's related to our changing workplace. But the other big challenge is, how do we change the employees themselves? And that is where this program, or any of these sort of programs, really have to focus in on very clearly. How can we take the chap from the left to the chap on the right? And these, more and more companies are now moving towards these types of desks. For example, at our company, we have standing desks. If we're having a meeting, we have standing meetings, and it's shown to reduce meetings by half if you have a standing meeting. So you can claim it's for health, but actually you just want to get people out your office quicker. And that's what our CEO does. Whenever he has a meeting, zzz, his desk comes up so he can get us out quickly. Right, so let's focus really on, because there's not a lot of time, what are the key elements for success that will help you within your organization implement, deliver, and have a sustainable, this for me is one of the key words for any form of wellness program. It has to be sustainable. A quick shot at this and a quick shot at that, a quick health promotion campaign on heart disease or diabetes, and then nothing else for 12 months. A counselor coming in doing a pointless talk on stress management. That's not a sustainable, well-organized strategic program. That'll be forgotten about the next day, which is why you get poor uptake at a lot of these sorts of sessions. So what we're doing is a workplace intervention. And as I'm focusing more on the wellness and resilience side of things, number one, do no harm. Whatever you're going to do, it's got to be good. Because as the old adage goes, good work is good for you, but bad work is bad for you. Obvious, but true. What you're going to do has to be evidence-based. It has to be shown to make a difference. Otherwise, you can spend millions of dollars, and you need to know what your target is. What is it you're actually trying to do? Like in the US, a lot of the big companies are having very much almost physical fitness campaigns. Their driver is to reduce their health costs, and it has been shown to have significant ROI, return on investment. Whatever you're looking at has to be affordable, and there has to be a cost-benefit to it. And these things have to be strategic. And this is a key one. It's a bit like HSE. If you don't get senior leadership buy-in, it's just not going to happen, because it has to be led from the top. All these programs have to be led from the top for the other employees to buy into it. It has to be focused, targeted, with specific aims. Now, the old days of where we as the HSE functions would tell people how to live their lives. This is how you live a healthy life. Stop smoking, stop drinking, stop eating sugar. We know that doesn't work. Drip, 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 drip. So the modern model is turning that around. Because if you have the big brother parental approach, thou shalt, we all know our children will completely ignore everything we say. You have to make the employees, and in particular the line managers, own whatever it is you're going to be putting in place. And as I say, I'm talking away from occupational health programs here, specifically. That's why that's important. So the ownership of any of these sorts of interventions, they need to be owned from the bottom. The people at the bottom level really do feel that they need to own it. And they have to be empowered. They have to be empowered, and the business lines have to be empowered. This shouldn't be owned by the HSE function or owned by the occupational health department. This needs to be owned by the business lines themselves, a bit like sickness absence management these days. And for any of us who have been to an executive meeting trying to put forward or present the case for one of these programs, this is how you feel when you walk out, because it's all about what's it going to cost, what am I going to get back, what's the ROI, what's the ROI? Which is why at the bottom here I've put demonstrate ROI. For any program to be sustainable, manageable, and successful, and for you then to move on to a bigger scale, you have to demonstrate there is some form of return of investment, direct or indirect, but the point is there has to be some kind of return. And the model has to change. Rather than the Big Brother health, it has to be health education. Rather than health promotion, it's health education, it's health empowerment. Empowerment is the big word. Any program has to be personal. People have to buy into it. It has to be useful for them. There's no point encouraging someone to join swimming classes if they're scared of the water. Things like that. It has to be personal, that is close to them. It has to be measurable. You have to be able to measure what you're doing. Otherwise, when you then represent that back into the board, they're going to say, well, what did we get for our money? Oh, well, our staff are very happy. They really enjoyed the away day climbing trees. They really enjoyed it. Yeah, but so what? Sickness absence come down. Workplace accidents come down. And create KPIs for that program. Using technology has a very successful outcome. So any form of technology makes these programs much more successful. Like the Walk for Life and all these sorts of things. And it also helps if there's a social aspect to it. One, you compete people against each other or functions against each other, but more than that using the social media, you create an impetus. You market these programs. And as I mentioned, you've got to be able to demonstrate it's actually done some good. It doesn't have to be financial, but there has to be some kind of return on investment. And this is really where the SMART analogy really fits in beautifully. It has to be specific, so targeted, has to be measurable, has to be achievable, has to be realistic, and has to be timely. If you can't tick any of those boxes, then you're wasting your time. And ROI, as I say, there's direct, there's indirect, but there has to be something quantitative. Some woolly satisfaction survey is not what management, that won't buy it for management. You have to be able to look at, here's your intervention up in the green. And this is what we're doing some form of intervention. Has it impacted on any of these others? So their ability to work, on their performance, on the sickness absence rates, on the accident rates, on the productivity. And there's good data out there. A really good one to look up is the Shell Pearl project in Qatar, who had amazing statistics on very simple interventions, cricket pitches, cinema nights, etc., etc. This is not rocket science. This is the thing. This is all easy stuff that we know because we enjoy it is good, but for it to be successful, you really have to be strategic about it, like I mentioned before. All kinds of numbers are banded around about ROI on these sorts of programs. It depends the kind of program you're talking about, but in general, well-targeted, well-organized programs can have that level of success. And these are fairly robust numbers. I mean, these are sort of the industry, and particularly the meta-analysis, that 25% reduction in sick leave. And the ROI varies. There's the range. This is amount you get back per dollar you've invested. But the median is about $2.71 per dollar you've invested. So there is a financial benefit, but you have to be able to demonstrate that. Just going to very quickly, these are sort of the umbrella programs. And I think it's important to, certainly in my mind, this is all my own opinion. If you think it's all rubbish, that's fine. This is just me sharing with you on my experiences. It's often useful to put it into three buckets. The wellness is the physical side of things, and separate out the mental health aspect, because it's such a complex, difficult field and challenging field. Because I always remember ExxonMobil when I tried to roll out a mental health program. I went to the board and they said, but we don't have a stress issue. You're on a sticky wicket to nothing if that is the approach. Reason being is in OSHA, it's virtually impossible to record something as a mental health workplace illness. So we don't have a problem. Yet that's not really the approach. So I think it's worth separating out the mental health aspect, and then also separating out very specifically the occupational health components of that. And I said I wasn't going to be touching upon that today. So those occupational health programs, they should be integrated or should at least speak to each other, but you don't have to have the occupational health to be able to do the other two. But I think it is worthwhile if you're mapping out or mind mapping how you're wanting to do these programs, to put them as those sorts of, and this echoes what I mentioned before. Who actually owns this program? It's the HSE manager, it's the occupational health manager. No, 10 years ago, yes. We were the ones that were accountable to the board for the kind of numbers. The new model is turning that, as I say, from bottom up. It's owned by the people on the ground, and they have to know they own it, they have to feel they own it, and the measurables and the metrics have to demonstrate that they are the owners of it, that they get the success, not you as the HSE or OH manager. Aren't I great? Look what, I've reduced sickness absence by 10%. And it's multidisciplinary. You really need to use all the functions. And I say you don't need an occupational health department to do this. The old days of the health belongs within the hospitals are long gone.
You have a few more minutes.
I'm ahead of schedule. I've deliberately kept it short, knowing that I didn't have a lot of time. So I've saved you some minutes, Mr. Chairman. So I've deliberately tried to, and I've maybe spoken too quickly. So apologies with my Scottish accent. So I think maybe we can take questions after. In that case, should I take a couple of questions now, or do you want to do questions at the end? We'll do it at the end. That's fine.
We can have more time to share with the audience.
So I think to summarize, the wellness programs, and I say excluding the occupational health side, it's on the outside. These are easy initiatives. It's not rocket science, but it's how you manage it. It's how you get the money for it. It's how you persuade management. It's how you show the successes of it. To make it sustainable, as I see, the two key words of this presentation were sustainability. I know it's the buzzword in HSE, that's why I used it. I know you guys like sustainability, and ROI. And those are the two things you really need to focus in on for this to be a success. So, thank you.